Hey, Trek Pros, Lauren Fletcher here with your Truck Chat monthly news recap. And if there was one theme running through Work Truck this month, it was this. The truck itself is only one piece of the operation. Because whether we were talking about disaster response, EVs, roadside breakdowns, manufacturing, or even the body behind the cab, the bigger question kept coming back to everything surrounding that vehicle and whether the whole system is actually ready to get the job done. But first, a quick word from our sponsor.
If your business has fleets to fuel, there's really only one way to go: Chevron. That's because Chevron is the source for insights and fuel. When you're ready to go to the source at regi.com.
Now, let's start with one of the most futuristic examples. Drones and robots are becoming real tools in disaster response, but getting one into the air is only the beginning. The information it collects still has to reach someone who can actually use it. Verizon Frontline showed us how that is already working in the field. Drones can give emergency teams thermal imagery, live video, or an early look at damaged roads and infrastructure before crews ever reach the scene. During Hurricane Milton, for example, Verizon worked with the National Oceanic Atmospheric Association to map tornado paths and help teams better understand where resources were needed. But when cellular infrastructure itself is damaged, connectivity becomes part of the mission. Verizon's tethered Hawk system can lift a small cell solution as high as 300 feet, essentially creating temporary communications coverage over an area where traditional infrastructure may no longer be dependable. And that changes the role of the truck supporting all of this. The work truck can become a mobile command hub carrying drones, charging batteries, providing connectivity, storing sensitive equipment, and giving operators a place to review the information coming back from the field, which means fleet may eventually be maintaining a whole lot more than just the vehicle. Now, from futuristic fleet operations to a much more immediate manufacturing question, the escalating U.S. Canada trade fight is putting truck production directly into the fleet conversation. Ford had planned to add capacity for as many as 100,000 Super Duty trucks annually at its Oakville, Ontario plant, but that capacity wasn't being added because Kentucky and Ohio had plenty of room. Ford said its existing U.S. Super Duty plants were already operating at capacity. GM's Oshawa plant tells a similar story from another direction. It has already built more than 500,000 Chevrolet Silverado pickups since production restarted there in 2021. So, if tariffs make Canadian-built trucks considerably more expensive for the U.S. market, moving that production south isn't as simple as flipping a switch. Factories need tooling, workers need to be hired and trained, suppliers have to adjust, production also has to be validated, and fleets have to live through whatever happens in between. Because the chassis, when it doesn't show up, the upfit doesn't happen. The truck scheduled for replacement stays in service. Maintenance keeps spending money on an asset everyone thought would already be gone. And the operation still needs a truck tomorrow morning. Interestingly, we also saw this on the other side of the domestic manufacturing story this month. Hankook is dramatically expanding its Clarksville, Tennessee operation, which opened in 2017 with about 900 employees and now employs nearly 2,300. The expansion is expected to bring the site to more than 11 million tires in domestic production, including about 1 million truck and bus radial tires. Hankook calls the strategy local to local, with the goal of producing tires closer to the U.S. dealers and fleets using them. Next up, let's talk EV reality, because if you're considering electric work vans, the vehicle itself may actually be one of the easier parts of the equation. One contractor featured in our coverage had 3 electric vans sitting for 2 weeks, not because the vans broke down, but because the depot's 200 amp electrical service couldn't recharge all 3 fast enough to get them back on the road in the morning. That's the kind of electrification challenge that doesn't always make it into the sales slide. And range anxiety looks different in a work truck fleet, too. It might not be the driver worried about getting stranded on the highway. It could be a dispatcher at 2 p.m. trying to decide whether the technician sitting at 32% can still take an emergency call 40 minutes away. Then add ladder racks, tools, HVAC use, inverter-powered equipment, home charging policies, utility upgrades, and whatever your actual Tuesday afternoon route looks like. The takeaway here is simple. Don't start your EV plan with the vehicle. Start with the routes, the depot, the electrical capacity, the upfit, and the work that truck actually has to complete. And for plenty of small and mid-sized fleets right now, a mixed energy approach may simply be the more realistic answer, while infrastructure and the supporting ecosystem continue to catch up. Speaking of keeping the work moving, we also took a deeper look at what happens when a work truck breaks down. Because with a vocational vehicle, roadside assistance is rarely just about getting a tow truck to the scene. The vehicle might be carrying tools, pulling a trailer, operating a crane, sitting behind a secured gate, or supporting an entire crew that can't start working until that truck arrives. One example really drove this home. A commercial truck carrying excavation equipment broke down in a remote area of Washington. Instead of treating the problem as one disabled vehicle, the response involved two tow trucks. One took the truck to the repair facility, while the second hooked up to the loaded trailer and continued on to the job site. The truck was still down, but the job didn't have to be. And that's really the point. Successful roadside planning for work trucks has to account for the vehicle, the body, the load, the equipment, the location, and what the operation still needs to accomplish that day. The same operational thinking applies before the truck ever enters service. We also looked at what fleets should consider when choosing between dry vans, platforms, and curtain siders. The cheapest body on the purchase order isn't necessarily the cheapest body over the truck's life. A dry van may make sense when cargo protection and interior customization are priorities. A platform offers flexibility for oversized loads and loading from virtually any direction. And a curtain sider can combine enclosed protection with side access. That last one can be especially interesting when multiple forklifts can unload from the sides at the same time. The bigger lesson is to spec around how and when and where the truck actually works, because body configuration can affect loading time, driver productivity, cargo protection, downtime, and long-term operating costs. And finally, strong fleet service partnerships don't usually collapse because of one giant mistake. Trust tends to disappear a little more quietly. Inconsistent claims decisions, training that fades after onboarding, and relationships that become focused entirely on price can all chip away at what looked like a great partnership on day one. The reminder for fleets and providers alike is pretty straightforward. Transparency, ongoing accountability, and mutual investment matter long after the kickoff meeting is over. Now, let's hit some quick headlines from August. Geotab launched a new investigations tool that pulls telematics data, photos, reports, and other incident details into one case to help fleets reconstruct what happened faster. NTEA is replacing its long-running Green Truck Summit with a new Future Truck Summit at Work Truck Week 2027, broadening the conversation to software, hardware, and advanced commercial vehicle technologies. Ford's upcoming Fathom midsize electric truck is also taking shape in Louisville, where the automaker is reworking its traditional production process with an assembly tree designed to build major vehicle sections in parallel. Registration is officially open for the 2026 Fleet Forward Conference, happening October 20th through 22nd, with commercial vehicle safety, AI, crash costs, autonomy, benchmarking, and plenty more for work truck fleets on the agenda. Stellar Industries products are now available through Sourcewell, giving eligible public agencies another cooperative purchasing option for mechanic trucks, fuel and lube trucks, hook lifts, and tire service trucks. And LinksUp is partnering with commercial auto insurer LEEO to help small and mid-sized fleets meet telematics requirements for insurance coverage without having to separately find and vet the needed GPS and dashcam equipment. Before we go, we had a little fun on video this month too. If you've ever stood at a trade show booth and suddenly realized you weren't completely sure how to pronounce the company name in front of you, we've got you covered. We asked representatives from several companies to find out exactly how their names are pronounced, and maybe mispronounced. Consider it homework before your next show floor. And finally, August ended with a little trip to Akron. Team Fletcher arrived at the Corporate Soapbox Derby as a rookie, officially took down Team Brown, raced all the way to the final, and finished second overall. I'm just saying, not bad for the first trip down the hill. But the much bigger win was what our two Bobit Business Media teams accomplished together. Team Fletcher and Team Brown raised $22,000 for the Hourglass Foundation, helping support scholarships and opportunities connecting people with careers in the skilled trades and automotive industry. And yes, we're already talking about what comes next in 2027. That's your August Truck Chat Monthly Recap. I'm Lauren Fletcher. Thanks for catching up with us, and I'll see you next month.